Hello, everybody, and welcome on this stream. The stream is a little bit informal, so I haven't prepared too much. I just want this to be natural. If you have any questions at all, just ask in the chat. I really like if it's a little bit interactive, so please send me all your questions and I'll just take a look at the chat every few minutes to see if there are anything interesting there. Now, what I would like to know from somebody of you is if the sound and the view is correct. Can you see everything? Can you hear me? 1, 2, 3 tests. 1, 2. I hope somebody. Sound okay, video okay. Okay, thanks Nuno again for the assist. Maybe I'll FaceTime you again in a bit. Good. So we are going to talk a little bit about a package that I've made called laravel-multitenancy. If you have any questions about this, just let me know in the chat. If you have any questions about other things, just ask it too. This is like an informal thing, like I've said. Now, before I head into the talk, I want to bring your attention to something that I've launched yesterday, the Laravel package training course. And that course contains like basically everything that I know about package building. It's 4 hours of content. We cover a lot. We say how you can build an agnostic package, how you can build a Laravel package, and we'll source dive some spaCy packages. So I think there's something to learn from everybody. The reactions have been great until now. And what I can also show you, get your pen and paper ready. I've got a coupon code especially for you, dear streamers. Thank you for watching. If you use that coupon code, then you get a discount of $10. And this discount code is only available today. So if you want to make an advantage of this, use this code today. And I've also made that code valid for MailCoach. So if people are interested in MailCoach, just use that coupon code and you get a $10 discount as well. So that was it for the commercial side. Let's talk Laravel multi-tenancy. Multi-tenancy has been this like big subject, and to me it always seemed a little bit heavy and something that I really wanted to get into because it seemed just a little bit too difficult. But for a recent project, I had to research the problem a little bit, and it was pure luck that Mohamed Said, the Laravel employee, also just started some videos about multi-tenancy and his views on it. And I really liked his lightweight approach on it, and I tried to package that up. And my package is even more lightweight than what Mohamed said. The package is also inspired by, of course, the videos that Mohamed made and through various conversations that I had with Mohamed. So let's take a first look at the tagline of the package: an unopinionated multi-tenancy package for Laravel apps. Well, what do we mean with unopinionated? When I was looking around for like multi-tenancy packages, I saw that most of the packages did a lot. They tried to solve all the problems that are involved with multi-tenancy. So what they did was they provided the first thing they did was provide a good system to switch from tenant to tenant. So to keep like the current tenant somewhere in memory. Then they had some code for what should be done when switching a tenant. How is the database connection going to be switched? How is the file system going to be switched? And they had a lot of code and options for that. And the third thing that those packages have is like some tooling. How do we run like an artisan command for, or like how do we run migrations for all tenants, stuff like that. And it was really heavy code, and I didn't really like that. So what this package tries to do, it will give you a simple way of tracking the current tenant, but for switching between tenants, what should be done, what configurations should be changed, the package really doesn't care about that. It just provides you an easy way to define what should happen when we switch the tenant. And for like the tooling, where other packages mostly have like commands for this is how you migrate tenants, this is how you do that for that tenants, this is how you do that for all tenants, our package just provides one command to make all existing tenants to make all existing artisan commands tenant aware. So it's, even though it is a heavy subject, it is a very light package. It can be used for strategies that need, for applications that need one big database for all the tenants. It can also be used for projects where each tenant has its own database. And that is what I will be demoing today. So I said that I didn't prepare anything, but I actually have a demo application ready here. And in this application, I already installed the package and made a few light modifications. So in Composer JSON, you see that we have laravel-multitenancy. You can see that I prepared this demo a while ago. I'm still using dev master here, and I'm too afraid to switch to the stable release in this video, but after the video, I'll try that out. And what we have here in the config directory is an extra file called multitenancy. And these are basically all the options that the package provides. So the way we kick off this template is how you can find a tenant, and we use for that a tenant finder. So Jason has a question here. How do you get PHP Storm to show the installed version? So that's here in composer.json. I think it's just the default in the latest PHP Storm version. So if you're on this version, you should automatically get it. I didn't do anything for that at all. Good. Back to the configuration file. So we have a tenant finder here, and this one defines which of your tenant is the active one for the request. And let's take a look at that domain tenant finder. It's actually a very simple class. It has one method, find for the request. We give you the request, and this class should give the tenant back. And the tenant, let me show you that first. It's also important to know. I have got some databases here, and I think it's called the landlord one, I guess. The landlord database has a tenants table that has a row per tenant. So a tenant has a name, it has a domain, and we'll use this too. It has a separate database. And I don't think that this is the right database because it is empty. Let's go to maybe the database config file. And here you can define various connections, right, for your Laravel application. And what the package assumes, if you use multiple databases, is that you have a tenant connection, and it has you can use any database that you want, but by default you should keep the database at null, and we're going to dynamically change that database name when switching tenants. I'll show you that in a bit. We also have a landlord connection here, and that landlord connection Yeah, that's just for the information that your application stores that is above your tenant. Some people also call it like the system database. And we use empty landlord here, multi-tenancy landlord. Let me see if I was in the right database. No, it is Laravel empty landlord here. So here it's empty landlord. I can close this connection, I guess. And here we have tenants. So our first tenant lives on this domain. The second tenant lives on that domain. Okay, let's go back to PHP Storm. So we have multiple database connections here. Maybe back to the multi-tenancy config file. So here we have our domain tenant finder. And here we use that tenant model and we just do a where domain and we give it the host of that request, and the first tenant that we find will be made the active one. Now, what happens when you make a tenant the active one? Well, if you take a look in the config file again, we have this option switch tenant tasks, and by default there aren't any tasks in here because you as a package user should define what should happen when you switch a tenant. But the package provides you one task to get inspired, and that is the switch tenant database task. Now let's see what is in this task. A task is actually a very simple class. It implements the switch tenant task interface, and you need to implement two functions: make current and forget current. And make current is the interesting one. We give you the tenant that will be made the current one, and you should change the configuration in a way that makes sense to you. Forget current, that's for requests that that make a tenant active, but you actually want to switch to the landlord configuration again, then you can do so. Now, let's switch back to that switch database task, and let's see what happens, what the implementation is for make current here for the switch tenant database task. What we are going to do is we are going to set the tenant connection database name to the database name of the tenant. So the get database name here is just getting the attribute here. And let's take a look here. So that's Laravel empty tenant 1 and 2. So let me open those connections as well. What was it? My brain forgot. Laravel empty tenant, yeah. Laravel empty tenant 1, and maybe also let's open Laravel empty tenant 2. And you can see here that we have a users database for the first tenant, we have a users database for the second tenant as well. But here we have that database name defined. So we are going to give that database name to set tenant connection database name. And what we are going to do here is we are going to get the tenant database connection name. So in the config file, you can actually define the name of the tenant database connection name. It's just tenant. And again, we reference there this name of this database connection, which is just tenant. What are we going to do with that database connection name? Well, if there is no such connection name, we just bail out. But if there is one, we are going to set the database name of that configuration. So this variable, we are going to set it to the database name that we provided. And in this case, it was the database name of the tenant. And then we are going to purge the connection. So this statement will actually let Laravel forget the connection. And whenever the first query comes in again, it will rebuild the connection. And so we're using actually by this, we're using the database that is configured here. That's how that works. Wait, let me go back to the right thing. Maybe let's see it in action. So let's go to the welcome view. I've already prepared the welcome view a little bit. So normally it says here the word welcome, but I've replaced it with the name of the current tenant. So if I go back to the database, to the landlord connection, you can see here that the tenant also has a name. Is there something else I should say about this? Maybe here it feels a little bit strange maybe to get the current tenant out of the container. This was just the easiest way for me to do so, but you can also just use the model itself, tenant, and get current here. But that's that's another way of doing it, but I don't like that fully qualified class name here. Normally you wouldn't just fetch it in a view, but somewhere else in your code, probably in your controller. Now that I'm here, you have several other methods here on a tenant. What you can do here also is check current, if there is a current tenant. And let me also show you how you make a tenant current. You can make a tenant current if you just have a model of that, and you just call make current on it, and then it becomes the current tenant. But this happens mostly behind the scenes. I'll talk about this later. Let's put this back in place. Let me show you something else on my terminal. So I've actually prepared Valet a little bit. You can actually point different URLs to the same application, and you can see here that I have the tenant1 domain is also pointing to this demo application, and the tenant2 domain is also going to this application. I think you can just add a link with Valet link and just add something here. I think if you just do tenant3 here, yeah, symbolic link. There we have like, I used test3, I should have used tenant3, but you can see here that now HTTP test3.test also points to this application. That's how that works. Okay, so I've blabbered a lot. Let's see if this actually works. So I want to see that if I go to this domain, I use that database. If I go to that domain, I use that database. Oh yeah, let's try it out. So it's tenant1.test. Oh, maybe you saw me autocomplete here. Tendency for Laravel. This is actually also one of the better alternatives for multi-tenancy. If you're interested in our package, I also suggest that you take a look at this one. There are actually a couple of other interesting ones. I think I have mentioned those somewhere, I think in the GitHub repo, with alternatives. So these, if you don't like my package, or if you just want to check out what others have done, just take a look at the others one as well, and just pick the one that that is best for you. This is something that I do with multiple of our packages. I am not saying that our package is the best. It's just the one that works best for me, and I always try to give the other ones a little bit of attention as well. Okay, but I want to do something else. I want to show you that our package actually works. So I'm going to tenant1. Or maybe let's just do tenant2.test. And you can see here that we're at tenant2. So we display like the right name here. Let me check if there are any questions meanwhile. And I don't see any questions here. Okay, let's go further. And if I go to tenant1 here, then we use the tenant1 database. So let's go to tenant2. And maybe let's register now something, because I just use the default Laravel scaffolding here. And I haven't changed anything about that code at all, but it should be tenant aware now. So Maybe I do user of tenant 2. Let me just register myself here. Yeah, use a strong password. Register here, and I'm now logged in here as a user of tenant 2. And if I go to the database, and if I go to the first tenant connection, there's no user here, but you can see here that it is in the database of tenant 2. So that's how that works. I see a question coming in from Nuno. Do you have this package running in production at the moment? If yes, what are the pains that you found so far? Well, it is built in a project that I'm currently building, but that project has, I think, a development time of, I kid you not, 2 years or something. So it isn't, I haven't used it in production yet, but we're using it in, yeah, something very big. And I've hit some pain points while testing, but I've all polished them out before tagging 1.0. So yeah. Hey, I love the alternative section in the README. Yeah, I love that too. I wish that more people would do that, because I think in open source, it's not really competition and trying to get as much eyeballs, but I want people, if they choose like a package of ours, I want them to have considered the alternatives as well, and maybe there's an alternative that's better. Maybe they don't want to use a lightweight multi-tenancy package. Maybe they want to have like something with all batteries included. So yeah, I think listing alternatives in open source is a good thing to do. Will this be able to run on Vapor? I guess so, because there's really nothing specific here. We just have a way of tracking the current tenant, and we bind that in the service container. And what should be done when switching a tenant? You can just define that. I think if you're on Vapor, just create your own tasks that work on Vapor for you. Use it with Mailcoach, please. Well, on the roadmap of Mailcoach, we actually have multi-tenancy on the way. Also drip campaigns, and we'll likely work on that somewhere in the summer. Okay, let's take a look at something else. Maybe how we run migrations. That's also a fun thing to do. So you've seen that there are 3 databases here. There's one landlord database, and it has its own migrations. So we create like the tenants table, and you can see here that the tenants databases, they also have their own migrations. And our package doesn't assume, I assume that you are probably going to have all the databases of the tenants the same, that in tenant database 1, probably you won't have an extra table here. You could do it, but I think it's not common. I think the tenant databases use the same scheme. Now let's see how we can run those migrations. So maybe it's fun if I just remove it all, so you can see that it actually works. So I always like to let people see practical things and make them feel like this is working. Let's go to here, and let's go to our database directory here. And here you can see that we have in our migrations a subdirectory landlord. Now I think that using or changing the tenant databases is what you'll commonly do. I think that the landlord database will be the more stable one. So I try to have like the tenant migrations like the default one. So you can still use make migration, and it will become a tenant migration. And the landlord is more something special. Then you should, if you make a migration, move it to the landlord migration. Now, how do you run those landlord migrations? Well, you can actually use the migrate command here. And the migrate command accepts a path to where the migrations are, and you should just specify the directory. It doesn't have to be landlord here. You can store them in any directory you want. And you should also specify the connection name you want to run them against. Now, this is something that Laravel named wrong, I think. This is not the database name. This is the connection name that is in the config file. So this one does not reference database, but it references landlord. Maybe I'll create an issue for that on the Laravel repo. So if I run this, then you can see that the migrations ran, and you can see the tables coming back here. But now, how do we run the migrations for all the tenants? We can't just use migrate here, because how does it know for which tenant it should do that? It should really do that for all tenants. And the package ships with a command called tenants artisan. And what this command will do is it accepts another artisan command, and it will loop over all the tenants. It will make each of them current and run the command you pass it to them. And if the command loops over it, we also give some output that you know for which tenant we are going to do something. And we'll also give the output of the command you give it. So let's try that out. And that didn't work. All done. I don't have any tenants defined, right? How can I fix this? Can I just seed this also? Nothing to migrate, but did it seed? We have no tenants, no. You know what? Let's just like that, maybe. We have some seed data here. No, we don't have some seed data. So does anybody know how to seed also here? I guess that this is wrong. Otherwise, I'll just manually manipulate it. No reaction. So I'm just going to add the tenants myself again. Oh, not a table. What am I doing? Just a row here. This is tenant 1. This is for the tenant1.test. And we have here the laravel empty tenant 1 here. That's that. And then let's duplicate that row. And this is tenant 2. Tenant 2. And for this one, you need to use the second database. And that's it, I guess. Maybe I should have done that, Francisco. Thanks for that. But I guess that this should work as well. Okay, let's go to the project again, and let's try the tenants command again. Yeah, and now we migrated. You can see here that we looped over it. We set that tenant as the current one, and we ran the migrations. And with any luck, we have some tables here again. So that's how that works. So it's pretty cool that you can make any command that isn't tenant aware, you can actually make it tenant aware. Now there's one more thing that I want to show you, and that is the tenant aware queues. And for that, I think I got something prepped here in web. Yeah. Okay. So let me also flush Redis so that there is nothing in the horizon queues. If you're interested in that command, flush Redis, that's it. That's just nuking all of Redis so that there isn't anything in there. Okay, so for jobs, imagine that you have a tenant active. There's a tenant that has been made current in the request, and in that request you dispatch a job. Now I think it would be nice if inside that job, the tenant that was the current one when the job was dispatched is also active in the tenant as well. And that's something, yeah, that we provide in the package as well. So if I go to multi-tenancy, we have another option here. Queues are tenant aware by default. There are actually some other ways to market jobs as tenant aware, but I'm not diving into that now. Go take a look in the documentation to see how that works. Let's just use the default option that the queues are tenant aware by default. So I have here, if I visit just the route here, I'm going to dispatch the test job. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to get the current tenant, and I'm just going to log the name of the current tenant here, and I'm going to say which database that we're using in this job. So let's try that out. So I'm going to tail the log. I'm going to maybe split vertically here, and I'm going to start Horizon. So Horizon started successfully. Now let's just start a job by making just a request to the second tenant maybe. I'm not logged in anymore, but with any luck, this should fire a job. No, it's only on the welcome view. It's not on the login route. It's here. So yeah, job is dispatched. And you can see here, hello from tenant 2. Tenant 2 was the active one in this job. And yeah, if I go to tenant 1, then here we say hello from tenant 1. So tenant 1 was active in the job, and this was the active database in the job. So that's how that works. Okay, that's how you can use the package. I'm also going to say how the package works. So we're going to source dive the package, but let me see if there are any questions now. What is your idea about SQL Pro? So I think you mean the tool SQL Pro. I think it was fine, but I think it's a year ago. It wasn't maintained very well, and then I bought a Table Plus license, which is actually maintained, and I've stick to it ever since because it's a nice UI and it works for me very well. I really like the views and the general layout of how it works. I like having the colors here and such. I've switched and I haven't looked back because it just works perfectly for me. Then, if I get that right, tenant artisan does the job for every tenant. Can you specify a tenant to run a single command only for that one, or do you have the current tenant one in CLI as well? Well, let's already source dive a bit. Spoiler, we have an option to run it for the current tenant. Let's just go to the package maybe, laravel-multitenancy. So this is the source code of the package itself. You can see here that we have one command, that tenants artisan command. And you can see here that we also accept some tenant IDs here. So what are we going to do when this command is handled? We are going to start a query for a tenant. We're first going to, if you didn't provide an artisan command, you will actually ask which artisan command do you want to run. Then we are, if there is a tenant ID set or if there are multiple ID sets, we are going to add a where clause to it. So we're only going to run it for those tenant IDs. Then we are going to loop over them with cursor, which is a very efficient way of looping large data sets. And for each of those tenants, we are going to run that artisan command that you gave us. So what we are going to do is we are going to output some lines so you know which tenant that we're now working with. We are going to make that tenant the current one. And with making the tenant current one, we are going to execute all the tasks that you defined here. So here in the demo, we had to switch database task here. And then we're just going to call that command. And that's basically all there is to it. So I hope that answered that questions. Now here, what about jobs that run for the landlord? Should failed jobs table also be on the landlord migrations? I guess it does. If there isn't a tenant, the current one, when you dispatch a job, then no tenant will be made the current one inside that job. So if you're on the landlord connection, or if you're in a request for the landlord, then no tenant will have been made active, and all jobs will also run against the landlord. One question here. So multi-tenant needs a centralized database to manage tenants? No, not at all. You could use this perfectly for with a single database where you maybe have some tables where you maybe have for users, you have tenant ID here, and the tenant and the tenants live inside this database as well. The package makes no assumption for that at all. You've seen that we've switched databases because in our demo application, if I have it here, we had that specific task here to switch databases. But if you don't have this task, yeah, you'll basically just use one database. That's maybe also good to see that we let me show you that in the package itself. It's this one. We actually have a tenant model here, and you can see here that we have uses landlord connection here, and that's just setting like the connection name of this. And if you only have like one connection, what you should do is in your configuration file, you can just set like the the tenant database connection name to null and the landlord database connection name to null, and then we'll just use the default database connection, which is I think MySQL for both the tenants and the landlord, and then you're basically working with one database. Is there also a separate cache for the tenant and the landlord? Well, again, by default, the package doesn't do anything for that. If you want to do that, you should create a task and add it here. Now, it's a nice coincidence that the package has a task which isn't used by default for switching cache. Let me show you that. So here are the two tasks that the package ships with, and they are more for inspirational uses. So because there are multiple ways of switching databases, maybe you want to use a different port or something like that. But this shows you just a way that you can switch a database. And we also have that for the cache. And for the cache, it works similarly. If for this task, the cache should be different. So if this tenant should be made the current one, we are just going to change the cache prefix to a certain cache base. I think the cache base, where is it? It's just tenant underscore ID followed with the tenant ID. And we're just going to dynamically change the cache config. And Laravel actually, let me go to the database, to the real demo application. It actually has an option for memory-based caches to just define a prefix, and then you'll have separate cache instances. Maybe I should show you the tests for this one, so it's also clear. Let's go to tasks, prefix task test. So this test, it proves that it will separate the cache for each tenant. Cannot open pf like that. This test passes. So we are going to push something in the cache for the key original value. We are going to make a tenant the current one. We are going to put key again in here with the tenant value. We're going to do the same for another tenant. Then we are going to make the first tenant the current one. And if we then get key, then we have that tenant value. If you make another current tenant the current one, we get another value. And if we forget the current tenant, then we get the original value. So that is how that works. Before diving into more source code, let's just see if there are any questions. Any other changes in controller or model file? No, not really. For models, you should, let me go to this one. For your models, the only thing you need to do is to apply the uses landlord connection or uses tenant connection trait, and they just set the connection name that we have in the config file. And that's the only thing that you need to do to your models. And your controllers, you don't need to do anything there at all. So the cache service is shared and you act on the cache to set with the right prefix. Yes. The task that ships with the package does just that. But if you want to do it in some other way, just create your own task. And creating a task is very easy. Let's just do it in the demo application here. Let me just create like a support directory. Let's create a class in here. Switch or maybe I'm going to prepare cache task or something like that. This one should implement, I guess I don't know how the interface is named. Switch tenant task. Okay, wait. So implements switch tenant task. Add the method stubs. Yeah, and if this tenant should be made the current one, yeah, just change the configuration of your cache in such a way that makes sense to you. What could you do here? Yeah, maybe if you use a database driver, you could let that task just change like the table name or something. Maybe you want to use different tables per cache. You can do whatever you want. This is like the unopinionated part of the package. The package doesn't know what you want, just it allows you to easily define what should be done when switching a tenant. What advantages do you think there are between one or multiple databases from a programming perspective? I think, this is my personal thoughts on this, is that I think for the majority of like SaaS-like applications, like for instance the type of Odeer or maybe Forge, I think just having like a single database and just using a foreign key in each one of the tables to scope per tenant is just good enough. I think it's multiple database to me only makes sense for like very big applications. So like the one I'm building now, it has like it has hundreds of tables. The relations go pretty deep. And you could solve it with like just scoping queries and such, but it is so cumbersome that it actually makes sense to have like databases per tenant. It really depends a little bit, but I do think that like in the vast majority of cases, like a single database is enough. If you want to know more on that, you should see the Larcon talk by Tom Schlick, I think. I've mentioned his talk in the introduction of my package, and he tells a lot more about the pros and the cons about that. He's the professional. I'm just doing whatever I think is right or feel is right. How do you handle file uploads from different tenants? Well, what I would do probably is if you want to have like different storages per disk, I would probably have like a tenant disk here, and I would create like a task that just changes the route of the disk per tenant. And you can, I guess you can do that with S3 as well. Just If you're using S3 and you want to have your uploads per tenant, just create a task switch bucket or something and dynamically change the bucket property. Let's see, how do I set permission cache for each tenant? Yeah, it's been a while since I used spaCy permission cache myself, but I guess it is just changing dynamically the cache config file. Just create a task for that and you're done. An idea would be called switch view theme. Yeah, sure, go ahead, do that. The package doesn't care. I'm not going to include it in the package because I want to be very light and I don't know who needs that. But if you need that, just go ahead and create a switch view theme. I tried this package and it doesn't work for PHP 7.3. Yeah, we only support the latest version. We have the luxury of getting to use the latest version on all our projects. So for us, it really doesn't make sense supporting older PHP versions. We just want to use the latest version of the language. We create those packages mainly for ourselves, and we want like the maintenance burden to be very easy, and we don't want to think about old PHP versions. That's why we normally just really don't care about older PHP versions. If you needed something for an old PHP version, check if there's like an old version of our package. Maybe it's stable. And if there isn't an old version, yeah, then I guess you should fork the package and invest your time to add compatibility with. It just doesn't make sense for me to invest my time in it because, yeah, I don't need compatibility with older version. That's why. Okay, no other questions. So I'm going to highlight one more thing in the code, and that's basically, yeah, how do we actually switch tasks. So let me go to, this is the demo application. Maybe we should go to the service provider of the package because this is where it all starts, right? So what are we going to do here in this package? Here is where it gets interesting. So if you don't know what a service provider is, just buy our Laravel package training course. I'll tell you there. But joke aside, I'll tell you here. It's just the entry point of a package. Laravel will call this when Laravel boots, it will go over to every service provider. And I guess it first calls register on all service providers, and then it calls boot on all service providers. So what are we going to do here? We are going to do some general stuff for the package, but here's where it gets interesting. We are going to register the tenant finder, and the tenant finder, that was that class that finds the tenant for the current request. So we give you the request, you should give us back the tenant that should be made active. We are going to register that task collection, so that is that those tasks here, those will be instantiated. And then here's where it gets interesting. Then we will configure the requests. So in configure request, what are we going to do? We are going to call, if we're not running in the console, but if we have an actual web request, we are going to determine the current tenant. So we are going to take a look in the config file, which is the current tenant finder. We are going to instantiate that, and then we are going to call that find for request method, which maybe gives us a tenant back. And if it gives us the tenant back, we will actually make that tenant the current one. That is basically all that is done. Now let's take a look in the tenant model, what we do to make a tenant current. Blank out here. Yeah, it's here, models, tenant. So make tenant current. What is happening here? We are going to call an action class. And an action class, that's also basically something that is defined in the configuration file. Here you have several actions that this package can make. And this is basically to make the behavior even more configurable. Mostly these actions, they do what they need to do. But if you want to make some changes low level, you can override these actions as well. But wait, let me go back to the tenant. So we are going to get that action clause and we are going to call execute on it, and we give it the this, which is the tenant that we are making the current one. And what we're going to do here is actually very simple. We are going to raise an event so that other parts of your application know, hey, we are going to switch tenant. Then we are going to perform the tasks to make the tenant current. And that's basically going over the task collection. And task collection, that is a class that is basically a wrapper to all tasks that are defined here. And we are going to call make current on each of those tasks. And those make current functions, yeah, you've already seen those in the switch database tenant task. Here we are going to switch the database name of the current tenant connection. In the cache tasks, we were going to change the prefix of the task. So that is what is being done here. That is perform task to make the tenant current. And then we are going to bind the current tenant. And that's basically just putting the tenant instance in the container, and we use the tenant container key in the config file, and by default I guess it's current tenant. Yeah, it's current tenant. And that's how in the welcome view here that worked. So this is because we've bind the current tenant in the container. Let's go back to the package. Switch, where were we? Make tenant current action, yeah. So perform task to make the tenant current and bind the current tenant. Then we fire off a little event that the rest of your application knows, hey, there is another current tenant, and that is basically it. Cool. Maybe one last thing that I'm going to show you is how we make the queues tenant aware, because that's also a nice thing, and that's being set up in the service provider. And that's actually a trick that I learned from Mohammed in his videos. So here, after we configured the request, so we determined the current tenant, we are going to configure the queue. And that's also being done by an action that will execute, make tenant current aware. And we're going to do something when jobs are being queued. So when you're going to dispatch a job, and we're also going to do something when a job is being processed. What are we going to do when a job is being queued? Well, we are going to register a callable to the Laravel queue, and Laravel will actually execute this whenever a job is dispatched, and you can actually inject extra data in every job this way. And what are we going to inject in the extra job? If this job is tenant aware, and that is the case when the option is true here. Which option? Queues are tenant aware by default, and in most cases this will return true. And if there is a current tenant, then we will say, hey, if you make a job, add this to the payload, tenant ID, and give it the ID of the current tenant. So that's being done when a job gets dispatched. When a job is being processed, so when it gets pulled from the queue ready to be handled, we are going to do something. We are going to listen for a certain event, job processing. Then we are going to take a look at, hey, this job, in that payload, is there a tenant ID that we just set? If there is none, we're not going to do anything. But if there is a tenant active, we are going to find the current tenant for that ID, and we are going to make it the current tenant. So we are going to again make current. That's just executing this action. We are going to perform those tasks, and we are going to bind it as the current tenant. And that is really all there is to the package. I think it's really lightweight. It doesn't get in the way. I also think that if the package, if you want to customize the package, or you don't want to be dependent on the package, I think you could just copy the code into your application, and it's simple enough to understand and to modify a little bit. Let's head back to Safari. So yeah, I've source typed the entire package with you. The documentation, yeah, it explains everything that I've said, and in some places in more detail than I've said. If you liked this source dive, the package training that we've launched also contains a few other source dives as well. So if you want to see me explain some other things, yeah, you could consider buying this course. One of my favorite videos in this course is actually a 90-minute long video where I create a package from scratch, and I really had a lot of fun creating this one. I just hit record and didn't cut anything, so I explain how I think. You can see me make mistakes because I make mistakes as well. Now, if you like, if you want to buy this course, remember, use this coupon code, which is only valid for today. Thank you for watching. Let's head back to multi-tenancy. And the last thing that I'm going to do is see if there are any questions about this package or anything else, and otherwise we'll be done. Let's see here. I'm watching 2 streams at once, Caleb's and Frakes. Doesn't your brain explode if you try to do that? And yeah, there are a lot of people streaming, I guess. Maybe I should pick another moment to stream. I think that like Friday is like the most popular day to do it, but maybe I'll just do it on another day in the future. You guys are crazy. Yeah, I guess so. Okay, I guess if there are any more questions, then we can call it a day. I had a lot of fun doing this. I'll probably do this again. I really like the informal feel. What I don't like is that I don't have like a way to see any of you or talk any of you, because now would be like a good time to have some interaction. Maybe I'll figure that out for the next time. But for now, I guess we're done. Thank you all for watching, and I guess, yeah, have a nice weekend, and see you some other time. Bye bye.